Welcome to Empathy Empire. I'm Kim Smiley. My guest today is Ellen Schwartz, an educator, kindness trailblazer, community leader, author, and the founder of charities Project Give Back and Jacob's Ladder. Please join me in welcoming Ellen to the podcast. Ellen, I am so happy you're here with me today.
I love being with you and I love your beautiful space. It's so nice to sit in here, very relaxing.
Yeah, it's
Thank
pretty
you.
zen, right?
Very,
My
very. The art,
aquarium and the art give it a real zen
gorgeous,
vibe.
gorgeous.
When I think of you, I think of the consummate teacher when I think of Ellen Schwartz. I know you do a million things. You've started multiple charities. You are like an educator. You run so many different programs, but I think of you as a teacher. That's the way that I really see you.
Thank you. This, I feel like I'm always learning too. Like I'm always learning, and I try to share the little nuggets of gold I learn along the way.
You once told me that one of your best teachers was your son Jacob.
He still is.
He's your best
Absolutely.
teacher. Yeah.
Actually, all of our kids are our best teachers. I mean, you're a mother of two. I'm sure you feel the same way. They're constantly teaching you about yourself. They,
Yeah,
right?
100%. Adrian Gold once said that you either marry your homework or you give birth to them.
Huh,
And I think that that's
interesting.
such an astute way to put it.
Yes.
So you're
Yes.
the mom of three kids.
Yes.
Tell us about your kids.
So our eldest was Jacob. He passed away when he was 21. Then we have a daughter, and her name is Beverly. And Beverly is, well, it's Bevy now. She just turned 23. And we have Ben, and Ben is 19.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things you talk about in your book is that you believe in miracles. I believe in miracles too. And one of the first miracles that happened to you in your life was the birth of your son, Jacob, when you were 30 years old.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
So when Jakey was born, we were ecstatic, as we all are when our first child is born. And we just noticed he wasn't making any of his milestones, like very early on, about 3 weeks. The books always say your baby's supposed to be tracking eyes or lifting head, and Jacob wasn't able to do any of those things. So when he was 4 months of age, he was diagnosed with a disease called Canavan disease, which is a rare neurodegenerative disease which attacks the central nervous system. So uh, Jake was robbed of most of the things that we take for granted. So he wasn't able to walk or talk or see or move. He had trouble with his breathing. He lost his ability to eat by mouth. And here's part of the miracles is we were told he wouldn't live till 5, and we had him for 21 years. So he really was and remains a gift to our family, to my life, to he still is my muse, to everything I will do in the future. He comes along for the ride.
Were you always an extraordinarily empathetic person, or do you think giving birth to Jacob really amplified your empathy?
I think I always felt for people. I think, um, I was that kid even as a young girl. I was friends with everyone, right? Like I was friends with all the different groups at school. I liked everyone. I felt for everyone, and I think I was always that way. I really liked the underdogs. I really felt for the children who struggled, and I still do today. And those are the kids I zero in as a teacher. Like those are the kids that I'm like, I'm gonna help you. I get you. Um, yeah, so I think I was always, I would say, an empath.
Mhm. Take me back to the day that you and Jeff went to the hospital. I think it was at Sick Kids in Toronto, and you saw that he wasn't meeting those milestones. And you were filled with fear, I think, on that day. You didn't know what to expect, what you were going to hear. Take me back to that day, Ellen, that you were sitting in the doctor's office with Jeff and you
Yeah.
got that news.
Oh my gosh. Well, I remember the woman, her name is Dr. Fagenbaum. She's South African and she had the most beautiful accent. And I remember hearing her accent and hearing the horrible words coming out of her mouth and thinking, this doesn't mesh. How could you have such a beautiful accent and be telling me these horrible things that, my son will never be able to walk, talk, see, move, will die. Like everything I dreamed of was just like she was
Shattered.
shattering it all. And she had this beautiful way of saying it. So I was like, I honestly that day I was like, "Are you for real? Like this is how is Mary Poppins telling me like these words, right?" So that's that day, and I thought it was the worst day of my life. I really did. I thought that was it. How could life get any worse? And and then he died, and that was the word. Like, there's nothing I don't think there's anything that will be worse than that. I hope not. Oh gosh, I hope not.
It's against the natural order of things, right? Losing a
Yeah,
child.
yeah, yeah. Well, just somebody that you love with your heart and your soul, they leave you. Like, you can't right? It's just as a parent, you just can't even imagine it, and it happened. It happened, and I still can't imagine it, and he's not here. But, I take like I said, I take him everywhere I go. I learned very quickly that our relationship, um, wasn't over, it changed.
Tell me about that.
So, I just he carries on in everything I do, in my teaching, in every lesson, in how I try to just slow the world down, in how I try to see life kind of how he saw life through his eyes that couldn't see. I design these bracelets, and in these bracelets, there's along with your beautiful bracelet, but they all have a shiny bead, and that shiny bead represents the rules that Jacob followed just naturally, and he was so positive. He was so appreciative. He was able to live in the moment and he was so accepting of everybody around him. And I wear this bracelet to constantly remind me that's how I have to live life because when I was with him, that's how you couldn't help but living his life and the way he saw the world. And he just brought you to, the zen place always. And I try to carry that forward always.
You tell this incredible story in your book. You were driving, I think Ben was 10 years old, and Jacob was in the back. He was in his wheelchair, and he
Yeah,
was nonverbal,
yeah.
Jacob, but he really communicated.
Through his eyes,
Through his
through
eyes,
his
he had a
eyes
smile.
and his smile, yes,
Yes.
and he was able to vocalize, like, he would at usually the most embarrassing times, he would just squeal out in delight, and you'd be like, "Oh my gosh," like, because, in a quiet place or once in court or, like, just really at times where you don't want that or a play or, you know, um or when someone was sad, he would giggle. Like he just I don't know what why, but he did, and he made you giggle. He brought you out of those things. So, um, yeah.
That
But the
story though
story, the
really that
story.
story really struck me because you were so panicked. Like the wheelchair flipped over, you were driving with Ben in the front seat. Tell me the story.
So we were doing a country drive.
Right.
I had my 2 boys, and I had a wheelchair van, and Ben was in the front seat, and we were listening to music. Jakey was in his spot. I always snap him into place in the back of the van or just behind us, and then strap him in. And we were listening to music. Ben and I were bopping, and Jakey was smiling. And then I hear like a bum, a bang, and I look back and I can't see Jakey's face in the rearview mirror.
Mhm.
So I stop the van, panic.
On a highway?
It was a country road, like a
Okay.
country highway, a 2-lane that we were going up a hill and heard the bang. Got out of the car. I said, Ben, don't move because we're in the middle of traffic, and ran around and I pulled up the latch of the car to try to get to Jakey, and I saw the whole wheelchair had fallen backwards and his head was on the ground, and I'm looking, oh my gosh, like about to say, Ben, call 911. And I look at Jake and he's like giggling like there's no tomorrow. Like he just loved the ride. And it just kind of captures who Jacob was. Yes, life is hard and life is unpredictable. And but I'm going to enjoy every second I can. And that's how he lived his life. And that's how I try to continue to live mine. Not
Beautiful.
always. It's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
It's very hard.
But yeah.
Let's talk about how Jacob became a pivotal part, really the star of Project Give Back, which is the charity that you gave birth to.
Okay. So I was a teacher. As we started, I'm a teacher through and through. And I love teaching. And I taught for 18 years at one school, from grade 1 to grade 6. And I love teaching. And then Jakey was born. And everything I was teaching didn't have the same meaning. Yes, math matters. Yes, science matters. Yes, English matters. But he just shifted things into gear in a very different way because as a teacher, I just wanted to teach these kids to be more empathetic and to be more compassionate and to be more understanding of others. So I took the entire curriculum and created what's now called Project Give Back. The logo is a boomerang. When you throw out kindness, it comes back and hits you harder. So every lesson kind of fits into that circle. Um, the children choose a cause that is really meaningful to them. And then they go on a journey and we teach them how to reach out, how to research, how to um, prepare a meaningful speech that's from their heart and not from a piece of paper. And then the children become the teachers and we become the students. And each class they lead and they teach us about what matters to them. So, what's really born in the classroom is this safe environment where people talk about what really matters and we help navigate the whole situation. And that's what it's about. It's bringing empathy into the world.
And you use Jacob as a teacher in the classroom.
So when he was younger, I used to bring him into the classes. And it was such it was fear to acceptance in 40 minutes. And I would wheel him in, and most children have never seen anyone like Jacob before. So they would be in shock. I didn't announce he was coming in. They all knew about him because I share the story, but there's one thing about telling a story and one thing about being near someone that you're uncomfortable with.
And these are grade 4 students, correct?
Grade 4 through grade 8.
Okay.
So we have different it depends on the school. A school chooses what grade they want Project Give Back in, and then it's that thing that you get in that grade. So, yes, so I would bring him into the classes, and then they just start asking questions. And sometimes very questions that they'd be afraid to ask. But I say, ask away. And they would just fire off these questions. And I'd notice they'd move closer and closer and closer and closer to Jakey. And then they would sing to him and they'd see Jakey light up and they would be almost on top of him by the end. And then by recess, they'll say, can we take Jacob out in the playground? Like they made a friend. They just, at first, all they saw was a boy in a wheelchair and then in the end, they saw this boy who happens to be in a wheelchair. So they didn't even see the wheelchair, they just saw the boy. And that's what happened in this class.
So did you use him in all your classes when he was younger?
I I used his story
Okay.
to launch it, but no, I couldn't take him into
Right.
every classroom. But we were lucky enough to video part of that class, and now anyone can see it.
On YouTube?
It's on YouTube. It's on our YouTube channel, Project Give Back Connects. It's called the Jacob Lesson.
Okay. It's grown so much, Project Give Back, since I met you. I think when did it start? What year was it?
So I did in my own class for years, but took it on the road in 2007, and it's been running since then.
How
And
many
it's
schools now are you guys in?
well, COVID hit us hard. So we were in 67, 70 classes a week, and then we tailored back to about 30, and now we're climbing back up again. And hopefully next year we're back online and we'll have a lot more classes. It hit us like everyone else.
For sure.
Right.
Of course. Inclusion has become a buzzword. And I think that a lot of people don't really understand what inclusion means, or they have a very kind of flat, one dimensional understanding of what inclusion is, right?
Mhm.
You, I think, really add depth to the idea of inclusion and really round out the understanding of what inclusion is and how powerful it can be.
Mhm.
I was very moved by your definition of it in the book. Can you talk to me a little bit about inclusion and what it means to you and how it's become a product of Project Give Back?
Absolutely. So, um, when, as you said, when most people think of inclusion, they think of, um, ramps, elevators, handles, closed captioning, that kind of stuff. Uh, when I think of inclusion, I think of someone like Jakey and a lot of the friends I know, and it's the special needs world teaching people what life is all about. So to me, that is really what inclusion is all about. And what I've seen, here's a great example of probably the most beautiful example of inclusion that I could see is we used to have music at our house every single Sunday. Jacob loved music. So a lot of talented performers would come over and sing with Jakey, family members, friends, a lot of young people who are now becoming famous, which is really cool. But so they would always come over. And then COVID hit and and Jacob passed and the music died for a while. Well, one of Jakey's buddies, her name's Taylor, who used to come over sometimes on Sundays and enjoy the music, she called me and said, Ellen, I really miss the music. So I said, okay, Taylor, let's bring it back. So reached out to all of Jakey's very talented friends, and we went on Zoom, and Taylor was there, and we started having Zoom concerts. And then we reached out to the special needs community and said, who wants to enjoy these concerts? And they've been happening every single Sunday for 2.5 years. They're called Sunday Jams, and at 4 o'clock on Sundays. And it's all ages, all abilities. And regardless of the ability, and there's huge gamut, and the ages are from 3 to 104, right? So we all come in, everyone's together, everyone's included. It's so the chat is just constantly, you're doing great, you're amazing, I love you, blah, blah, right? It's so uplifting and it's so happy, and everyone feels so comfortable and everyone feels appreciated and valued. And I think that that is probably the most beautiful example of inclusion that I've seen in a long time.
That is beautiful, really beautiful. You talk also about actions being so much more important than words. We
Mhm.
know that Jacob couldn't speak. Talk to me about that.
So probably one of I don't want to offend anybody, but probably one of the worst things you can say to somebody when they're going through a difficult time is, "How can I help? What can I do?" Because I don't know about you, Kim, if somebody says that to me when I'm going through, I'm a giver, like you're a giver. Um, I'm just going to say nothing. I'm good.
Right.
Right? That's what we say, but we need help. We need it. We're just not the type of people, and I think most people are not the type of people that will ask for stuff. So I think instead of saying, "What can I do to help?" you just help. You just step in. That's why I say action is stronger than words. Just step in and just do it. Drop off a meal. Say, if you know the person well, you say, when is your daughter's dance class? I'm going to come and get her and take her. Or tell me, when does the dog like to walk? I'm showing up and taking your dog for a walk. Just whatever it is. And sometimes it may be the wrong thing, but it doesn't matter. The fact is that even if it's the wrong thing, they know that you care and that you're trying to help and trying to be there. And then usually what happens is there's a shift once that action is understood, then the meaning is heard, and then they may say, "Hey, do you mind picking up soup for me at Nortown?" Right? Like whatever it is,
Creates an opening.
it creates an opening. Yes. So don't ask, just do.
I think because we're Canadian, I found this was different when I was living in the US, but Canadians don't want to step on people's toes. They don't want to be intrusive.
Yes.
They don't want to be overbearing. But what you're saying is so true. When someone asks me what they can do, I never say that they could do something. I always say,
Right.
no, no, it's okay. We're good. We're fine. Because I don't want to impose upon someone with my needs.
Yes.
But even the smallest gestures, just like I was speaking to someone whose, father passed, someone got them an Uber Eats card. They didn't have to worry about making dinner for
Mm.
their family. Someone organized a meal train for them,
Yes.
for their family. So I don't know if people are familiar with meal train, but it's this incredible. I don't know what you would call
It's
it,
an
a
app.
platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a platform basically where if there's a death in the family or something happens, where people could sign up to organize bringing meals to someone. Because the last thing you want to worry about is food when you're
No,
dealing with some kind of trauma.
exactly.
Right? So I think it's so important what you're saying. It's such an amazing tip in terms of cultivating empathy. Just
Yes.
do it.
Just do it. Just do it. And don't be afraid that it's the wrong thing. Like, honestly, and I think that that's what also stops people is they don't want to do the wrong thing.
I don't want to offend.
Yes, but if your heart is in the right place, you can never offend,
Yeah, absolutely. You talk
right?
about how after Jacob died, all you wanted to do with your family was be in his room. But his room was like a hospital.
Yes.
And you had a couple friends who I don't think they even asked you, or did they
Yeah.
ask
So at the time, we were living in a rental house
you? Right.
because we were building a dream house that fit all Jakey's needs, like the jams on Sundays and just so Jacob could be everywhere, in our home. So, but we were in this rental house and Jake's room, I guess it used to be a den, and we transformed it into his room. So, yes, it was like a hospital room. It had his hospital bed, it had his oxygen, it had his pumps, it had all his medical supplies, everything was there. And when he passed, this was the time when Shivas were happening, like it was before COVID, right? So I knew that,
Just describe what a Shiva is for people who don't
oh,
know.
a Shiva is it's a week of mourning with a family. So people loved ones and friends and family come over and pay respects and they visit. And it's just a beautiful and exhausting part of the Jewish religion. But it's really important. Nobody works. It's just time to grieve and mourn and honor that person. So Jacob at the time was living we were living in his house and his room was a den, whatever. And I knew that his hospital bed was going to be a coat rack. I knew that it was in the winter. I knew people were going to throw all their stuff down. And I didn't want that because that was the room I wanted to be in. That's the room where I lay beside him for hours and hours and hours. And that's where I just felt if Jacob were if his soul was hanging out, it was going to be in that room. So I was telling a couple of girlfriends that. And the next day, there was a knock at the door, and it was a mover. And he took out the bed, he took out all the medical equipment, he took out almost everything, and then filled it with really comfy, cozy furniture and put all his artwork up on the walls and just made it in the most beautiful lounge. And that's where we could be that entire week, which was beautiful. So it was friends that acted on a little tip when I just said, I don't want his bed to become a coat rack. And that's what happened.
One of the biggest openings for empathy is listening, like really active and deep listening.
Mhm.
And you could from that little thing, your friends just they sprung into action and they did something so meaningful
Absolutely. Absolutely.
during such a tough week.
Yeah.
I remember being at the Shiva and there were so many people.
Yeah, you know what? He touched just every age. He touched young people, he touched elderly, he touched the special needs world, he touched so many kids. I mean, if I could show you the stacks of letters I received from students, like thousands, I'm not talking hundreds, thousands of letters from young people just saying the most beautiful things. Thank you for sharing Jacob with me. I'll always remember him, or just the most beautiful sentiments. It was really special.
One of the things you say is that your job now is to carry on Jacob's light,
Mhm.
which I love. Like he's still present through your actions, your family's actions, other people's actions who he taught. We don't like it's the spiritual dimension, right, of grief and when we lose someone.
Mhm.
But I feel like he's still very present, Jacob. His legacy is still very present.
Yes, I feel his legacy is present. I feel he's in me all the time. And there have been, I did this again, I'm sorry. There have been times when I've actually felt, not even felt, it was almost like being hit over the head with a sign that he's said, "Hey, mom, I'm okay."
What's the biggest sign?
Oh, so there were two, and on his birthday, which is kind of cool.
Mm.
Uh, the first one was for years, we couldn't take Jakey a lot of places, so we used to bring the community to him. So every year on his birthday, we would bring in an ice cream truck to our street. We would invite all the neighbors, family, friends, the whole day. People would drop in and they'd sing to Jake, they'd cuddle with Jake, they'd spend time with Jake, and we just open it up all afternoon and evening. And his first birthday, we were at the new house, the house that we were building for Jakey that he never made it to. Um, and we were packing up the car. We were driving north. It was a long weekend, and Ben and I were packing up. And all of a sudden, we hear an ice cream truck, and it came right to our driveway. And the driver says, "Hey guys, do you want an ice cream?" And I start to cry, and Ben went and ran for an ice cream, and then I asked him, "What made you come to this street? Our street's not a thorough, like, it's not a cut
Mhm.
through." So I'm like, "What made you come here?" He goes, "I don't know." I said, "Is this your daily route?" He says, "No." He said, "So what made you come to our driveway today?" He goes, "I don't know what it is. I just felt that you guys could use an ice cream."
That's incredible. What a story.
Yeah.
What's the other
So
story?
the other story was, the following year on his birthday, which is May 17th, so it's why it's always the long weekend-ish. We were up north, and near our cottage is a convent, and in the convent grounds, there's a beautiful labyrinth. So I just was walking my dog and walked over to the labyrinth, and all of a sudden, my dog kinda pulls me in a direction, so I follow, and he stops at this flower, and I take my camera, and because you can do on Google, right? You can push something and it'll show what it is. Do you know that? That's really cool on your
Yeah,
anyway,
share me
yeah, I'll
that
show you,
later.
it's really cool. So, and it came up, it was Jacob's ladder, the flowers, but that's not the end of the story, okay?
Well, you have to tell people what Jacob's ladder is too, but keep going with the
Okay,
story.
so right, okay, so that's the flower
The
that
flower was
was
Jacob's ladder.
Jacob's ladder, and then so I took a picture of the flower and the labyrinth, and then got home and was looking at my picture, and my girlfriend looked at the picture and said, "Don't you see what's there?" And I went, "No, I see, like, I'm telling you the story about the Jacob's ladder." She said, "Ellen, look, a full ladder in the shadow of the trees from where we were to across the labyrinth to the Jacob's ladder. It was a full ladder." Now, Jacob's ladder was the name of the charity that our family founded for years in Jacob's honor.
Tell us
So
about the charity. I'm familiar with it, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners and viewers won't know about the charity because we have followers all over the world.
that's good, Kim. Okay, so,
Then
the charity is called Canadian Foundation for Control of Neurodegenerative Disease, And we changed the name to Jacob's Ladder because my very smart brother said, "Ellen, how's anyone going to remember writing that down on a check?" This is when checks you had to write checks, and so Jacob's Ladder was born, and we loved it because of Jacob, of course, climbing to a cure, the biblical story of Jacob up and down the ladder to the heavens, right? So it was a beautiful name, and that was our charity, and in 18 years of having our charity, we're able to raise millions of dollars for education, research into neurodegenerative diseases.
You were able to provide all kinds of free testing
Yes,
to all
across
kinds of women. You
Canada.
didn't have access to that testing
No, we did
when
not.
you were pregnant with Jacob?
So one of the things early on we did is we partnered up with Sick Kids Hospital to screen to see if there was a carrier rate of Canavan disease, and it was quite high. So what we did with Sick Kids is now anyone across Canada could be tested for free and hassle-free to see if they're carriers not only of Canavan disease, but 7 other neurodegenerative diseases. So that was one of the things that Jacob's Ladder was able to accomplish.
And you accomplished so much that I don't think it exists anymore, right? The charity hasn't been disbanded?
The charity's been disbanded when Jacob passed, but, it's not often that a charity launches and actually accomplishes everything it set out to do.
It's the dream of a charity to
And
do
that's what
that.
we did.
It
We
is the
did.
dream.
I mean, we have a research award that goes on for the next 25 years at Sick Kids. So we were able to park that money, and Sick Kids brings in once a year this researcher from all over the world. They come to present our doctors with their findings. So the sharing of education is continuing. We also were able to fund a pool up at the JCC North called the Jacob's Ladder Therapeutic Pool. So that's something else we were able to do. And we were able to fund many programs for young adults with special needs because that is adult programs is a very difficult subject. All of a sudden, you're 18 plus, and it's like falling off a cliff. So we were able to help a lot of families in that area as
And you
well.
still are doing this?
Well, we made significant grants when we disbanded the charity. And now I continue Jacob's legacy through Project Give Back and through empathy.
One of the things you talk about in Without One Word Spoken is unlikely friendships and the incredible friendships that came to fruition with Jacob
Mhm.
and with you too. You talk about this one man, I think his name was Sam,
Yeah.
who came up to you in a restaurant and kissed you on the top of the head, a stranger.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Sam became your friend.
Sam became my friend. It was so sweet. So yeah, we were all sitting at a restaurant, and as always, Jacob couldn't see, so I'd always one of us would always be holding his hand, stroking his hair, just letting him know he's okay. We got his back, right? And Sam was watching us across the room for about an hour. So he came over and kissed my forehead, and he just said, "I love your love." And then we became friends. He came over to our house. He visited Jakey. A year after Jacob passed away, he called me and said, "You're going to give a speech that day, right?" I'm like, "What?" Sam, that's one of the hardest days of my life. How can I give a speech that day? He goes, "That's why you're giving a speech that day."
He was in the front row.
He a few times when I would come out and give talks, I'd look in the front row and there was Sam sitting there. Like, he was really special human being.
Incredible.
Yeah,
That's
and
so
Sam's
beautiful.
by the way, Sam's in his 90s.
Really
Yeah.
believe in your vision.
Mhm, mhm.
That's something Jacob taught you?
Yeah, I think he was the spark because Jacob gave me my voice, because my voice became his voice. So when you are speaking on behalf of your child, there's no stopping. Like, yeah, right? But that's with everything. And it made me realize that if you really, really want something and you really believe in something, you go for it. And people will come along with you on that ride.
It's magnetic when people have a vision and a passion like you have.
You know, case in point, we used to have this event and it was called Jake's Gigantic Give. And it was a weekend fundraiser, a full weekend where we would take over this massive space and fill it to the rafters with donated toys, mostly from Spin Master Toys, Mastermind Toys, Canada Group. And this toy store was magical, except you couldn't buy one thing in the store. And all weekend long, people would come to the store and we would take them around with our 300 volunteers, all teenagers. They were in wings, and they would ask the families questions. Do you sleep in a bed? Do you get to eat 3 meals a day? Does somebody love you? Do you get birthday presents? And then they say, you know what? There's many people that don't get these things. So they would walk around the store and they would fill baskets with the most beautiful toys. And then they would write cards to these families. And then on exit, there would be 8 charities that would accept these toys. And thousands of toys went to thousands of children for the holidays. But what was so beautiful is because when I first presented this vision to my volunteer team, they were like, "How is that fun? How is that gonna be fun?" Anyway, but when you believe in something, it happens, and people come along and they believe in it too, and it was magical.
I wasn't able to attend. I never attended, but I heard about it from a lot of people.
This may have been pre-babies with you, like,
Yeah,
I think it was
pre-babies.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You and I had spoken about the physical manifestations of grief and also of empathy. When
Mhm,
you're an empath, you often physically feel things in your body, even sometimes before your mind or psychologically, before you're cognizant of it, your body is reacting
mhm,
to a reality. And
mhm.
that's something that empaths deal with. You are an empath. You were dealing with this unimaginable grief, and you had physical manifestations of your grief, which I think would be interesting for people to hear about.
Absolutely. So the last year of Jacob's life, he had a lot of trouble with his breathing. So his breathing was very shallow, and every breath was so difficult. So I felt the same way. I was having trouble breathing, and there were many times where I felt like I couldn't breathe too. So I did it again. I felt like I could not breathe as well, and I remember the last couple of days, I just felt it. I honestly, I wanted to be able to breathe for him, like, and I just remember it so, so clearly. Every breath was so hard, so heartbreaking. And I remember we were in the ambulance on the way to the hospital for the last time, and I remember almost giving Jakey permission, saying, "It's okay. It's okay. You can go. You can go." And the last my gosh, the last moments with him, we were all with him. We were all the family was all together. Bevy had come in from Halifax. We were all around Jakey, and we watched him take his last breath, and I remember being able to breathe. I remember absolutely being able to breathe. So his mission was so fulfilled, and even though you can never ever be prepared for that, and I just like you said, I felt it. I felt his pain and I felt his relief, and I feel him today still.
What do you feel now?
Just love, just pure love, gratitude. Um, I miss him desperately. Um, and the grief is still strong. Um, and I dive into it. I never run away from grief. You can't run away from grief because if you do, it's gonna get you.
Puddle jumping,
It's
right?
gonna well, yes, when our we were lucky enough to receive grief counseling, for our children because they were young. Bev was 19 and Ben was 15 when he passed. And that's the best piece of advice our family was given. Think of your grief as puddle jumping. You know, you're jumping from puddle to puddle to puddle. Sometimes they're close and sometimes they're far away, but let yourself sink and go in and you will come out the other end. I promise you. And now I actually I look forward to the puddles. I want to sink because life gets busy again. And I just can't wait for a puddle to come so I can sink. And when I do, it's like, there you are. Hi, Jakey. And I embrace it. And I'm so grateful for it.
When you meet people now, I know that one of the first things you think is, "Oh my gosh, you're not gonna be able to meet Jacob."
Absolutely. That is one of the first things I think, especially if they ask me, how many kids do you have? I'm like, it's always an awkward question. And I do say three. And then they say, oh, how old are they? And I'm like, again, your heart beats because, and you have to polish some of those answers because at first it took you by surprise, like, how am I going to answer that? So I say forever 21 and then however old my other two are. But that's how you answer now.
Forever 21.
Forever 21.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
One of the things that you bring up in Without One Word Spoken is about how we worry as parents.
Yes.
Like how, we worry about everything. We worry they're gonna hurt themselves. We worry when they're sick, right? So I want you to talk a little bit about worry and how you've, grown into and leaned into worry in terms of your own self-development.
So when Jake was very young, we enrolled him in a gene replacement therapy trial, try to cure him, to fix him, right? He got very, very ill. We almost lost him a few times during that horrible time in our life. And we realized, you know, we're not going to fix him. And once we realized we're not fixing him, he fixed us. But when your child, or any child for that matter, is sick, you feel their pain, right? Like your a doctor once said to me, you're only as happy as your unhappiest child. And that's so, so true. So you worry a lot about your children. But with Jacob and his ongoing journey, how could you worry all the time? You just wouldn't function. So I developed something called worry time. And what I did was I used to go into the shower and at least I was clean, which was good. And it gave me a break, which was good. So I would go into the shower and I would worry about everything and anything that was bothering me. And if I could control it, I took care of it right after the shower. I called whoever I needed to. I wrote it down. I took care of it. Done. Lift. Check, 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 check. But if I couldn't take care of it, I would say to myself, Ellen, I've worried about that. There's nothing I can control. There's nothing I can do. And I'd try to stop worrying about it. And then it would creep up during the day. And I'd say again, Ellen, you've worried about that today. There's nothing you can do. Stop it. And eventually that worry goes away. But if you can almost manufacture worry time into your day, it really helps. It takes time and it's a skill, but I've been doing that now for 20 years and it really works. It gives you a lot of freedom to enjoy everything else that you have in your life.
It's brilliant actually to compartmentalize something like that that could be so debilitating.
Yes. Yes. And there are days where you just can't. You just you just can't and that's okay. But you know what? For the 10 days a year when you can't, opposed to every second of every day, it's a really great skill to try to master.
You are definitely, I know this is gonna embarrass you because you don't like when I compliment you, but
No, I know.
you're definitely one of the most empathetic people I ever met, and I think that what's so powerful about you is that you're transmitting it to so many other people, so many children, and you're teaching teachers to transmit it. And I think that those kids go home and they teach their parents with Project Give Back. So I think you've created this incredible intergenerational web of empathy with what you've done. And I remember with the final day of the empathy effect, you were featured twice on the empathy effect. You wrote one of the entries, and I think I wrote one of the entries. But on the last day of the empathy effect, you'll remember that we launched the empathy pledge,
Yes,
because talking about empathy is important, but doing is what's really important, as we've talked about today.
absolutely.
And so the empathy pledge was symbolized by a pin, and the pin was a promise to practice one act of empathy a day. And I remember that Project Give Back awarded the pin to the graduates one year
Yes,
of the program, which was so beautiful for me.
it
I
was.
just really filled my heart.
They loved it, and I actually it's still on my jean jacket. I wear it all the time. It makes me think of you, and it makes me smile. And it was such a great gift to as a culinary gift to these students to say it just because Project Give Back doesn't end, it ends today, empathy doesn't end. This is the beginning of your journey. And with that pin, it allowed them to remember that and to keep that empathy going. So thank you for giving those pins
It
to
was
us.
it
It
was
was
it was a
beautiful.
beautiful, beautiful graduation ceremony that you had, and I think that that's so important to just teach kids about being deliberate with empathy. I
Absolutely.
think you do that with Project Give Back.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Kim.
Okay.
Thank you.